Good day. My name is Professor Oliver, and you join me for another lesson in grammar for English 030 and 101. Today's focus of our lesson is addressing adjectives and adverbs. One of the really confusing things for students is often how those two are very different because they sound so much alike, and essentially they do a lot of the same things. So one of the things that we'll be thinking about is what's so very different about adjectives and adverbs. Let's begin first with our definition. Adjectives are words that modify or describe nouns. So you'll see things like pretty girl, tall boy, ugly shoe. Okay? But adjectives themselves have certain qualities that you want to remember. One of which is that they lack plural forms, meaning there's no way to make them multiples. Okay, so if you're describing one or several things, it doesn't matter. If you use the same adjective, it will have the same form. Another thing is that adjectives can be compared, and we'll talk about that in just a moment because that means some very specific things. They can be compared to each other. And finally, adjectives can be used to modify other words. And so when you're thinking about adjectives, we tend to think about modifying nouns, but they can also do other things like modify pronouns. There are some very common adjectives that are used, and we don't always realize that they're doing certain things within a sentence. But a word like a, an, or the, otherwise known as the articles, are some of the most commonly used adjectives in the English language. So we have an example here. A cassava is an expensive fruit. A is modifying cassava, and an is modifying fruit. The term expensive is another adjective, but both are serving as modifiers within the same sentence. Another way that you can use an adjective is to have a proper adjective within a sentence. So he speaks with a British accent. It's not just him speaking with an accent or a accent, which would be, of course, grammatically incorrect, but a cute accent. So you have here two modifiers, a, which is common, and British, which is proper. There are three features that you want to keep in mind when thinking about adjectives. One of which is the degrees of comparison for which you are using to present those adjectives. Another is the types of intensifiers that you have, and finally, what types of suffixes or word endings do we have for our adjectives. With regard to degrees of comparison, you have several, but they fall in three very general categories. There's the positive degree. I am thin, right? Boy, don't I wish. The comparative, which helps us to compare two or more things. You are thinner than I am. Or the superlative, which helps you to compare three or more things. She is the thinnest on our squad. One of the things, though, that you want to keep in mind with regard to superlatives especially is you have to think about the logic that goes into that superlative. Oftentimes students will use like the most something ever, and there's really no way for you to determine that when you're using it. So you have to be aware that sometimes using superlatives is not a good idea because it's just not logical or possible for you to prove or show that. So we have some more examples of the comparison, the degrees of comparison. And I want you to recognize that there's more than one way to express a degree of comparison. So the first that we have is thin. We used that before. I am thin. Well, you have the option of using thinner, and you can also use more thin. I am more thin than you. The same thing holds true for both. They're both comparative, comparing two things to each other. With the superlative, you have the option of thinnest or most thin. She is the most thin on our squad. So you're not just stuck with the and est forms of these words. You do want to, however, beware. Several times I've heard people use superlatives that they've created. And even sometimes in advertising, like with the Six Flags commercial, you will have words that have been thrown together because they sound as though they are legitimate, but they are actually not legitimate at all. So anytime that you're using a superlative, you want to be sure that you're using an actual English word. Funner, just to give you an example, is not a word. With regard to the intensifiers, intensifiers answer the question, to what extent is this adjective modifying something? So you'll have the words very, really, to, quite, rather, fairly, tremendously, other words that do things that intensify our nouns. But you want to be aware that often we overuse these terms, and then your description or your modification of the noun becomes vague. So just be aware that sometimes you can't really use really. It's really, really boring. Suffixes are endings that mark words at certain parts of speech. And so adjectives aren't the only words that have suffixes, but you just want to be aware that there are some suffixes that are very common in adjectival use. So you'll see examples here, like with the Y for moody, with the full for playful, with the able or ible for likable, with the ly for lonely. So we have several suffixes that are very common in adjectives. These are not all of them by any stretch of the imagination, but they are some of the most common. There are several types of adjectives, and I want to just point those out to you very quickly. We'll look at the examples as we go along, but recognize that words in the English language often have multiple uses. It really does depend on how the term is being used rather than what the word is. So you don't want to get into the habit of memorizing terms on a list, but rather seeing what it's doing within the sentence. That's going to be the thing that really helps you to become very adept at using English grammar and expanding your vocabulary, because a word isn't always the same thing every time it's used. Sometimes you can throw on a suffix or a prefix and its meaning changes, and also its use and where it shows up in the sentence. So as far as the types of adjectives are concerned, you have the personal, and we see a lot of personal pronouns in this one, especially those that are possessive, like his, her, my, our, their. He likes his milk hot. Okay, so that's a personal adjective. So it's not only modifying the milk, it's his milk, but it's also letting us know possession. So it's serving a dual role. The definitive relative, so it's showing a relationship, and we definitely know what's going on with that. So with the example, was that the woman whose purse was stolen? We know whose purse was stolen, right? So we're asking the question regarding who. The indefinite relative means we know a relationship, but we're not sure about that relationship. So whatever mistakes you make can be fixed. We see a lot of the who, which, and what in the definitive and the indefinite, or excuse me, the definite and the indefinite relative pronouns, adjectives, excuse me, but you want to recognize that with the indefinite, you will often see those suffixes also, ever and whatsoever. So just be aware that ever and so ever show up often with the indefinite, because we are not absolutely sure who or what is being discussed. The interrogative. We see the word interrogate, and we know that it means to question. So whenever you have an interrogative adjective, we know that they're asking about who or what or which is being referred to. So which way did he go? Okay, we're questioning that description. Finally, the demonstrative is showing us something, and that is what the word means, to demonstrate. So that is my toolbox, meaning that whoever is asking the question can actually point to it and demonstrate what they are referring to. So the demonstrative is usually pretty easy to remember. With regard to adverbs, adverbs are words that modify a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. And so you want to be aware that even though adjectives and adverbs both modify, you see some connectivity between the definitions. So adverbs tell how much, who, what, when, where, why, and to what extent or degree, or with what results or concessions you need to address our outcomes. There are 4 classes of adverbs. They include the interrogative, which again asks a question, the affirmative or the negative, and you will most often see yes as the affirmative, and that is actually the only affirmative adverb. No, not, and you'll oftentimes see the negative forms of these adverbs in contractions: could not, have not, was not. Intensifiers, those are words that tend to heighten or exaggerate our relationship with the verb. And so very, completely, totally. She was very fast at running. Okay, so it intensifies our notion of her quickness with running. And then you also have some adverbs that are referred to as nouns, as in with the case of naming a time or place. And we'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. Suffixes, again, are word endings. And so very often you will see adverbs with the ly word ending, like with words, as in with words like quietly, skillfully, nervously. But that's not the only way to represent an adverb. You also have words like often, seldom, or as with the nouns, now or then. I like to drink tea now and then. That would be, now and then would be used as adverbs to describe how often I drink tea. Finally, you have the degrees of comparisons with our adverbs. So just like with the adjectives, where you have a positive, a comparative, and a superlative, I talk fast. That's our representation of the positive form of an adverb. How do I talk? Fast. How does comparing two things with relationship to the talking work out? I talk faster than you. So we have the comparative. And then, of course, with the superlative, where you are comparing three or more things and representing how those things are performed, I talk fastest when I am nervous. So we know that we have three or more things compared and that we are describing or modifying how an action is being performed. Hence the job of an adverb. You also have a couple of different forms of adverbs that you can engage in for each and every term. So you're not locked in to one particular form. So we have our examples here. The positive would be happily or rapidly, both with the suffix ly. But instead of just saying, oh, I'm going to do something more happily or less rapidly, right, with the comparative, you know that you now have two or more things that are being compared, and you can follow through instead of having just the same form being repeated. The same thing holds true with the superlative. You have most happily or least rapidly. So we know that we're comparing three or more things. So let's review. Today you've learned about adverbs and adjectives, and you have the definitions of each. You know about the classifications for each of those parts of speech and how they work within the sentence. You also have the features of each, which includes an explanation of the degrees of comparison, how those terms help to intensify language, and whether or not there are commonly used suffixes that follow through with each of the terms. Again, this was a lesson in English. My name is Professor Oliver. If you have any questions, please ask in class. Thank you.